Tonight, in our exclusive interview, President Vladimir Putin tells us he's going into next week's summit with relations with the US at an historic low.
We have a bilateral relationship that has deteriorated to its lowest point in recent years.
The Russian leader last met with an American president in Helsinki in 2018.
It's great to be with you.
So how does he compare former President Trump with the fifth American president he's now set to meet? He told us Biden is someone he can work with. You once described President Trump as a bright person, talented. How would you describe President Biden?
Well, even now, I believe that former U.S. President, Mr. Trump, is an extraordinary individual, talented individual. Otherwise, he would not have become U.S. president. He's a colorful individual. You may like him or not. But he didn't come from the U.S. establishment. He had not been part of big-time politics before. And some like it, some don't like it. But that is a fact. President Biden, of course, is radically different from Trump because President Biden is a career man. He has spent virtually his entire adulthood in politics. Just think of the number of years he spent in the Senate. A different kind of person. And it is my great hope that, yes, there are some advantages, some disadvantages, but there will not be any impulse-based movements on behalf of the sitting U.S. president.
We sat down for a 90-minute interview inside the Kremlin, where I pressed him on accusations he has ordered assassinations of his adversaries. The late John McCain in Congress called you a killer. When President Trump was told that you are a killer, he didn't deny it. When President Biden was asked whether he believes you are a killer, he said, I do. Mr. President, are you a killer?
Over my tenure, I've gotten used to attacks from all kinds of angles and from all kinds of areas under all kinds of pretext and reasons, and of different caliber and fierceness, and none of it surprises me. So as far as harsh rhetoric, I think that this is an expression of overall U.S. culture. Of course, in Hollywood, there are some underlying deep things in Hollywood, macho, which can be treated as cinematic art. But that is part of U.S. political culture where it's considered normal. By the way, not here. It is not considered normal here.
I don't think I heard you answer the question, the direct question, Mr. President.
I did answer. I'll add if you let me. I've heard dozens of such accusations, especially during the period of some grave events during our counterterrorism efforts in North Caucasus. And when that happens, I'm always guided by the interests of the Russian people and Russian state. And sentiments in terms of who calls somebody whom, what kind of labels, this is not something I worry about in the least.
Let me give you some names. Anna Politkovskaya, shot dead. Alexander Litvinenko, poisoned by polonium. Sergei Magnitsky, allegedly beaten and died in prison. Boris Nemtsov, shot moments from the Kremlin, moments from here. Mikhail Lesin died of blunt trauma in Washington, D.C. Are all of these a coincidence, Mr. President?
Look, I don't want to come across as being rude, but this looks like some kind of indigestion, except that it's verbal indigestion. You've mentioned many individuals who indeed suffered and perished at different points in time for various reasons at the hands of different individuals. You mentioned Lesin. Lesin used to work in my administration. I liked him very much. He died, he perished, or died in the United States. I regret to this day that he is not with us. In my opinion, he is a very decent, very good person. And as far as the others, we found some of the criminals who committed those crimes. Some are in prison, and we're prepared to continue to work in this mode.
But today, reports that Russia is offering to supply Iran with satellite technology that would help it target the US military in the region. President Putin denying those claims.
It's just fake news. At the very least, I don't know anything about this kind of thing. Those who are speaking about it probably will maybe know more about it. It's just nonsense garbage.
A really remarkable interview, Keir. What did he have to say about the cyber attacks that President Biden is sure to bring up in their meeting?
Well, Lester, President Putin denied any knowledge of hacking and called on President Biden to reach an agreement with Russia on cyberspace. Lester?
Keir Simmons in Moscow tonight. Thanks. And you can watch much more of Keir's exclusive interview with Vladimir Putin Monday morning on Today.